I still remember the sound of the whistle that night. Sharp, quick, and final. The field was empty except for us. Me catching my breath, him walking toward me with that look that said too much. It was supposed to be just practice, drills, and discipline. But the way Bryan's hand brushed my shoulder, steadying me after a bad fall, made the air change. We never talked about that moment again. Not out loud. But since then, every late-night practice, every glance across the field, has felt like we're running towards something neither of us is allowed to name. I still remember the sound of the whistle that night. Sharp, quick, and final. The field was empty except for us. Me catching my breath, him walking toward me with that look that said too much. It was supposed to be just practice, drills, and discipline. But the way Bryan's hand brushed my shoulder, steadying me after a bad fall, made the air change. We never talked about that moment again. Not out loud. But since then, every late-night practice, every glance across the field, has felt like we're running towards something neither of us is allowed to name. Still pushing yourself? He asked, voice low enough to sound almost like concern. Almost. I tried to laugh, but it came out breathless. You said winners stay late. His smile curved in that way that always undid me a little. Yeah, but I didn't mean every night. The wind caught his hair, and I looked away before he noticed how long I was staring. When the final whistle blew, silence took over the field. Just the sound of our footsteps crunching against the turf. I picked up the last ball, pretending to focus. Bryan stepped closer. You've been off today. I'm fine, I said too quickly. Fine doesn't miss 3 passes. His tone wasn't harsh, but it carried weight, the kind that made my pulse trip. He stopped right beside me, close enough that I could smell the clean hint of soap and sweat. I hated that I noticed. Or maybe I didn't. I just had things on my mind, I murmured. He tilted his head, studying me. Things or someone? The question hit harder than the drills. I froze, holding the ball between us like a shield. Bryan's eyes softened a little, realizing he'd crossed a line, but he didn't step back. I'm your coach, he said quietly, almost to himself. I should probably know if something's distracting you. I think you already do. The words slipped out before I could stop them. His jaw tightened, not in anger, but in restraint. For a second, neither of us moved. Just a faint buzz of the lights and the weight of everything unsaid. Then he exhaled, slow. You should hit the showers. I nodded, but my legs didn't move. He turned, walked toward the bleachers, and for a moment I thought that was it. The line drawn, the distance kept. But then his voice came again. You've got potential, you know. Don't waste it by chasing things that'll complicate your life. He didn't look back when he said it, but I did. And the sight of him standing there under the flickering lights made something twist in my chest. Because if I were honest, it wasn't a game that complicated my life. It was him. That night, I replayed every second of his words, his tone, the almosts, and when I fell asleep, I could still hear the whistle and feel the warmth of his hand steadying me. The sun was barely up when I walked back onto the field. Dew clung to the grass, the air sharp with morning chill. Bryan was already there, clipboard in hand, running the new players through warm-ups like last night never happened. He didn't glance my way when I joined the line, but he didn't have to. I could feel it, the pull between us, invisible but unshakable. When his eyes finally met mine, just for a second, it felt like time skipped. The whistle hung between his lips, silent. Then he turned away, voice steady as ever. You're late. I didn't think you'd notice, I said, trying to sound casual. I notice everything, he replied, not looking at me. And that was the problem. He always did. The drill started. My focus didn't. Every time he walked past, I caught the sound of his breath, the faint scrape of his cleats, the quiet authority in his movements. And I hated that my heart listened harder than my ears. After the scrimmage, he called me over, stay for extra laps. You missed a cue. I thought I was doing fine. You thought wrong. The others left, and once again it was just us, like it always ended up being. The empty field, the hum of wind, the sound of him pacing slowly behind me. Your form's off, he said, stepping closer. Here. He moved around me, adjusted my stance, one hand on my shoulder, the other guiding my elbow. It should have been routine. It wasn't. The air thickened between us, heavier than the drills. My pulse skipped. His voice dropped low. You're tense. Maybe because my coach is standing too close. He froze, then let out a quiet breath that almost sounded like a laugh. You're impossible. You started it. For the first time, he looked at me, really looked. And in that moment, all the boundaries we were supposed to have didn't matter. His hand lingered a heartbeat too long before he stepped back. Go hit the showers, he said again, but this time it didn't sound like an order. I should have listened. I didn't move. He turned, probably expecting me to leave. Bryan, I called after him. My voice came out rougher than I meant. He stopped but didn't turn. You don't make this easy, you know that? I'm not trying to make it hard, I said. Don't finish that sentence. There was something in his tone that wasn't anger. It was fear. Maybe because he knew if I said out loud what I felt, what he already suspected, it would become real, and real was dangerous. He finally turned around, eyes tired but kind. You've got talent. Don't lose it over something that can't happen. Can or shouldn't? I asked. His silence was the only answer I needed. He walked off the field, whistle in hand, and I stayed there, standing in the same spot where his hand had steadied me last night, the same spot where everything changed. The next few days, practice felt like a battlefield, of glances, of pauses, of pretending. But sometimes, when the team wasn't looking, I'd catch Bryan watching me, and his eyes said all the things we'd promised not to. We never talk about again, not the late-night field, not the touch, not the almosts. But every time that whistle blew, I felt it in my chest like a memory I couldn't unlearn. Because sometimes the hardest lessons aren't about winning or losing. They're about what you feel when you're supposed to feel nothing at all.